Hello everyone, Eric from Bohn Homes Residential, operating out of Keller Williams, Chicago O'Hare. Today we're going to learn about the multi-board residential real estate contract version 7.0. This is the universally accepted purchase contract for all residential real estate sales across Northeast Illinois. The 7.0 is where you, as the buyer, will be making your offer to purchase your next home. First off, let's understand its basics. It consists of 13 pages and 39 paragraphs. At the bottom of pages 1 through 12, there are spots for both buyers and sellers to initial. Always on the left-hand side, you, the buyer, will initial. And always on the right-hand side, the seller will insert their initials. There's 2 spots for initials on both sides, so both spouses or partners are taken into account. You'll see the property address directly beneath it. Each page must be initialed to be official. There are also other places in the contract which you'll initial as well. At the end, on page 13, both sides will sign and date it to make it a fully executed contract. It's a binding agreement. When you find the home you intend to purchase, you'll be receiving the 7.0 from me via DocuSign for electronic signatures. There'll be nothing for you to fill out or add because I've already done all that for you. This is why you're watching this video today, so we won't waste valuable time when it's time to make an offer on a hot property down the road. You'll simply initial and sign, because educating yourself today will prepare you for signing off on tomorrow. Things really speed up when it's time to make an offer, so let's prepare today so we're ready. Now, let's get into it. Paragraph 1, the parties. It's important we include your full name here. Full first name, full last name, and middle initial. Enough said. Paragraph 2, the real estate. Here is where you'll see the property's address, its PIN number. All properties have their own unique ID number called a PIN number. If it's an attached home, aka is it a condo or a townhome? If it's a detached home, aka is it a single family house? Or if it's a multi-unit home, aka is it a 2 to 4 unit building. Paragraph 2, continued. Designated parking. This only applies to condos and townhomes when there's parking offered with the purchase. It conveys the number of spots, the spot number, and where it's located in the building. Also, it identifies if the spot is deeded, meaning it carries its own unique PIN number. It's considered its own separate piece of property in the eyes of the county. Is it a common element? AKA, is it in a parking lot or garage where everyone parks without designated spaces? Or is it an assigned spot tied directly to the home which is being sold? The next line adheres to the same principles, but for storage units. Paragraph 3, fixtures and personal property added no value. In Illinois, it's standard for household appliances and everything else that's attached to the house to be conveyed with the sale. So there's no he said, she said conversations at the closing table. We'll check each and every item we're expecting you to receive with the sale of the home ahead of time. If there's something not on the list, then we have the ability to convey it on line 29. For example, you really love the home's above ground swimming pool and you just want to make sure that it's going to be there after you close. And on the contrary, maybe you don't like that above ground swimming pool. And then on the next line, on line 30, that's where you're going to make note of that. At the end of this paragraph, you have the opportunity to check off if you're asking for a home warranty. When we submit our initial offer, we're not going to ask for this. We'll dive more into the home warranty later on. Paragraph 4, the purchase price. This is where you're going to offer your price. Enough said. Line 39, Section A, credit at closing. For a home buyer, your closing costs are going to be around 2 to 3% of your final sale price. This is in addition to your down payment and your earnest money. Knowing this ahead of time, if you and your lender believe that the funds might be a little tight, you can ask the seller to pay for some or all of your closing costs, because at the end of the day, the seller will have the cash in hand from the proceeds of the sale. But keep in mind, this is not free money. The seller is still going to want to net the same. For example, you offer $300,000 in purchase price, and you ask for $6,000 in seller credits, which is 2% of $300,000. The seller may agree to give you the credits, but expect them to up your purchase price to $306,000. Your loan is now increased by $6,000 along with the interest it'll be incurring. You're only going to ask for credits when you really need them. Furthermore, lenders cap seller credits in relation to down payment percentages. Line 42, Section B, earnest money. Along with the purchase price, you're going to offer earnest money. This is your cash deposited into a third-party escrow account, which you'll receive back on the closing day. Earnest money conveys that you're a very serious home buyer, one who's willing to place cash in limbo for the next few weeks. The generally accepted amount is 2 to 3% of the purchase price. I've seen it below 2%, especially for smaller price points, and I've seen as high as 5%, usually in multiple offer situations and or higher price points. Before submitting your offer, we will discuss the amount of earnest money that you're comfortable with. Last point about earnest money, you will receive it back in full and quickly if and when the contract becomes canceled. Contracts become canceled when the contingencies cannot be met. These are the loan contingency, the attorney review contingency, also known as the home inspection contingency, and the closing contingencies. Buyers need to be really irresponsible to not receive their earnest money back. A good example would be that a few days before closing, you'll wake up one morning and you just decide you no longer want to buy that house because you prefer to purchase another home instead. Or you decide to move away out of state or to the other side of the world. It doesn't matter. You will not get your earnest money back. On the other hand, you losing your job is not something to be concerned with in terms of the earnest money. It's something to be concerned about, but not when it comes to the earnest money, because your home cannot be purchased if your loan isn't approved. A big part of your loan being pre-approved was because you'd be employed for the foreseeable future. The terms of your loan will be drastically changed should the unfortunate situation happen where you lose your job. This contract is set up to protect everyone's financial interests, both the buyer and the seller. Paragraph 5, the closing date. It takes anywhere from 30 to 45 days to close a standard conventional loan. FHA loans should bake in at least 45 days to close. We'll need to provide your mortgage lender enough time to approve whatever loan it is that he or she is offering you. And closings only occur during banker's hours. So we'll choose a closing day, Monday through Friday, at least 4 weeks out, that doesn't fall on a national holiday. Paragraph 6, possession. You will take possession of the home on the closing date unless other arrangements are made. We'll talk about this more later. Okay. Paragraph 7, financing. You will be financing the purchase of your house in one of 3 ways. Let's discuss the first one. You're purchasing with a loan contingency. If you're not a full cash offer, you're going to be financing the deal, which will require your initials on line 56. The deadline to have your approval from the lender is 45 days after this contract becomes executed or 5 days prior. Generally, my lender takes 30 days or less, just so you know. On line 60, I'll check the type of loan that you're using. It's either going to be a fixed rate or an adjustable rate mortgage. And we'll check off if it's a conventional loan, an FHA, a VA, or a USDA approved loan. On lines 61, 62, and 63, we note the loan to value ratio, aka the percent of the loan, the interest rated loan, the length of the loan, and lastly, the points you'll be paying the lender on the loan. The majority of these last few items are not a big concern to the seller. I'll place the current interest rate in there, but know you and your lender will hammer out all the details of this as well as the points once you go under contract. Don't be concerned with what I list as these figures other than the type of loan and the loan to value ratio. These are the figures on your pre-approval letter which a seller most cares about. As stated earlier, financing is a huge part of your deal reaching the closing table. If financing isn't secure, then your earnest money returns. The second one, cash transaction with no mortgage. It is as it sounds. Initial here if you're buying with full cash. Congratulations. And the last option is cash transaction, mortgage allowed. This means you're financially able to cover a cash deal, but you have the option to enact a mortgage before you close if you see fit. Initial here if you're liquid enough to cover the full cost, but you're still on the fence whether or not you'll be financing some of it. All right, on to paragraph 8, statutory disclosures. For any property that's not being sold as is, you'll be countersigning the seller's disclosures as it pertains to the property, the lead-based paint on the property, and the radon within the property. This section simply conveys you've read the disclosures and you understand their terms. You're also initialing that you've read the required pamphlets that everyone receives. I give everybody, my buyers and my sellers, these pamphlets which I'm referring to very early on in the process. Also, there's a completely separate tutorial on my YouTube channel that dives into the disclosures. Paragraph 9, prorations. Many payments due from a homeowner are paid in arrears, meaning the bill arrives after the benefit of usage already occurred. After you purchase the home, you need to be sure you're not paying bills for the time the seller actually owned the home. Lines 122 through 128 pertain to the tax prorations. However many days accumulate between the last tax bill and the closing day, the seller is expected to reimburse the buyer at the closing table for. It's standard practice for sellers to give the incoming buyers 105%, assuming the taxes are going to increase year over year. We're going to go ahead on our initial offer and ask for 110%, hoping maybe the seller may be asleep at the wheel on the other end. They won't be. They'll knock it down to 105, and then you'll just go ahead and accept that. Lines 129 through 134 pertain to HOA dues. When purchasing a condo or any other property with association dues. The same principles as the tax proration, the seller reimburses the buyer for the bill which will appear in the future. If you're not buying into an association, these lines will not be filled in. Paragraph 10, attorney review. Another contingency in the contract is the attorney review. Attorney review lasts for 5 business days and begins the day after a contract becomes fully executed. During this period, the attorneys are ensuring the 13-page contract has been correctly completed and that it appropriately conveys the intentions of their clients. If an agreement is unreachable following post-home inspection negotiations, the contract will be canceled with you receiving your earnest money back. Read on. Paragraph 11, waiver of professional inspections. It is as it sounds. Don't waive your home inspection rights unless you know you're doing a full gut rehab and going down to the studs. I will rarely, ever, almost never suggest that my buyers waive a home inspection. Paragraph 12, professional inspections and inspection notices. Happening at the same time as attorney review, your home inspection is also being conducted. Then the post-inspection negotiations will begin with you requesting certain actions be taken by the seller to remedy, fix, or replace specific defects discovered during the home inspection. Because of this further negotiation, it's extremely common, it's almost expected for the attorneys to extend the attorney review period past those initial 5 days. In Illinois, the attorney review period and the home inspection go hand in hand. So do not get too bogged down about that 5-day review period as I just spoke about. Your earnest money will be returned if an inspection modification agreement cannot be met. Paragraph 13, homeowners insurance. You're required by the government as well as your mortgage lender to acquire homeowners insurance. If for whatever reason a buyer is uninsurable, then they do not meet the mortgage contingency terms, the loan contingency terms. Therefore, the contract becomes canceled. Paragraph 14, flood insurance. When a property is located in a floodplain, it's required to have purchased flood insurance. Paragraph 15, condo common interest associations. When a property is located in a condo association, there's a separate body of rules and regulations which have been established by the association's board. Incoming homebuyers need to know what they are, and they need to agree to them. After receiving the condo docs, the buyer has 5 days to cancel the contract if its terms aren't something they will agree to. Paragraph 16, the deed. The deed is to be transferred over from the seller to the buyer at closing. Paragraph 17, municipal ordinance, transfer tax, and governmental compliance. Some villages in Illinois require their own pre-sale home inspections, seller disclosures, and transfer taxes when a property is being sold. Other villages do not. Sellers and buyers adhere to the village's ordinances when transferring title. As a home buyer, neither the state of Illinois nor Cook or Lake County require transfer taxes. Your attorney is going to walk over a lot of this stuff after you go under contract. All right. Paragraph 18, title. Paragraph 19, survey. It's the seller's responsibility and expense to ensure title is handed over to the buyer free and clear when transfer of ownership occurs. In conjunction with this, a present-day survey is paid for by the seller, which confirms there are no encroachments that the buyer is going to inherit. Paragraph 20, damage to real estate or condemnation prior to closing. When a catastrophe happens between the contract date and the close date that alters the home or its grounds, such as fire, flood, or other natural disaster, or complete negligence by the owner or the owner's tenants, or maybe someone on the road decided to drive their car through the living room window. Any of these scenarios would fall under this stipulation, and then you wouldn't have to go through with it, and the contract is canceled. And of course, you would get your earnest money back. And also, it refers to condemnation, meaning the government's taken over. They've been foreclosed on, or maybe it's eminent domain, and the house is no longer what you thought it was when you went under contract. Okay, paragraph 21, condition of real estate and inspection. As an incoming homeowner, it's expected that the seller leaves you a clean and tidy version of the home without leaving any unwanted personal property behind. Very simply, at the final walkthrough, we're going to make sure that's the case. If, for whatever reason, the house is not the same condition, maybe the movers made some holes in the wall when they were moving out the couches, or the tenant who lived there decided to get a little brazen before he or she left, then at the closing table, we will require that the other side, the seller, leaves money of your decision in an escrow account, and that they take care of everything and they won't get their earnest money back until that happens. That rarely is that the case. Usually you're going to go ahead and buy a place and it's going to be in nice condition when you get there. But, that's why this contract exists, just to protect you for all sorts of scenarios. Paragraph 22, seller representations. Aside from negotiating the post-inspection in the attorney review, your attorney is also researching that the property is not currently or scheduled to be levied with fines or legal prosecution by the village, county, state, neighboring residents, or third-party contractors. And they're ensuring the seller has owned the home as an upstanding citizen, following all compliance laws, and has rectified all issues if and when required to by law. On lines 296 through 308, unless otherwise advised, we will check the for are not and is not boxes, therefore placing the legal onus on the seller to disclose otherwise. You want to purchase a property as it's been marketed to you. Paragraph 23, real estate tax escrow. In instances of new construction or when an existing home has extensive remodeling or major additions, by law, Both seller and buyer deposit 1.5% of the purchase price into an escrow account at the title office the day of the closing. This 3% in total will be towards the buyer's benefit to put towards the new tax bill after the future reassessment. If the 3% doesn't cover the full proration, the seller is obligated to cover the shortage. If the seller's 1.5% isn't necessary, they'll receive back the surplus. Okay, paragraph 24, business days/hours. As mentioned earlier, real estate deadlines follow banker's hours. Paragraph 25, electronic or digital signatures. As mentioned earlier, were legally approved to e-sign via DocuSign. Paragraph 26, direction to escrowee. If this contract doesn't close, then both sides sign a mutual cancellation agreement and your earnest money is returned to you. As long as the contingencies aren't met. Not in the case where you decide to move to the moon and just never buy the house. Then you won't get your earnest money back. Anyway, paragraph 27, notice. All notices to the other side need to be written and cannot be conveyed verbally and must be delivered within certain time frames. Your attorney will keep you on track. Paragraph 28, performance. The deadlines set forth throughout the contract are to be honored. Time truly is of the essence when a home does go under contract to sell. All right, we'll take a little break here. All right. Line 370. The followed numbered paragraphs are part of this contract only if initialed by the parties. A very big heads up here. Very big heads up. Everything from this point in the contract until the contract's signature page is only applicable when it's being signed off on. These are what we consider optional provisions. If a paragraph is left blank, then both sides are agreeing that the language does not apply to this transaction. Therefore, when I submit the offer to you for your initials and signatures, understand that if I have left some or all of the next 3.5 pages blank, then it was on purpose. When you see a blank paragraph, move on to the next one. Paragraph 29, confirmation of dual agency. Dual agency is when a real estate agent is representing the seller and the buyer in the same transaction. Due to conflicts of interest, I do not practice it outside of the rarest of occasions. My standard is to provide the highest level of service to all my clients. It becomes very difficult to do so when I'm representing the other side as well. On to paragraph 30, the sale of buyer's real estate. Of everything on the few remaining pages of the contract, this next paragraph is by far the most important piece you need to leave here with. It's so important it goes beyond the length of a page. It's also the most confusing. Even though it's an optional provision, please do not skip ahead. You need to understand why it's here, when it's applied, and how it can still affect your sale even when you're not implementing it yourself. Okay, on to the details. If you're initialing line 375, then it's because you need to sell your current home to fund the sale of the house you're buying. You cannot hold two mortgages for even the shortest amount of time. The paragraph is so vital to the success of a real estate transaction, it's split into two separate sections. Let's dive into section A, representations of buyer's real estate. Everything in lines 376 through 393 pertains to your role as the seller of your current home and the person who is buying it. On line 378, number 1, it'll simply display the address of your current home. On line 380, number 2, there are two check boxes to choose from here. Depending on which box you check, or more accurately, the box I'll check on your behalf before sending it to you for signature, you're telling the seller how far along you are in the process of selling your home. Is your home under contract? Check the first box. Is it not under contract? Check the second box. If the second box is checked, then you as a seller of your current home have yet to go under contract. You're for sale on the market just like everybody else. You want to avoid checking this second box whenever possible to strengthen the terms of your offer to purchase your next home. If you check the first checkbox, then you are under contract, and that's the better scenario of the two. And now move directly on to the next three checkboxes labeled A, B, and C on lines 382, 383, and 384. By checking is or is not to these three checkboxes, you're disclosing the terms that your buyer needs to meet in order to eventually close on the home you currently own. What happens next will define how strong of an offer you're proposing to the seller of the home that you intend to purchase. Subsection A, is your buyer's purchase contingent on being approved for a loan? In other words, has your buyer initialed paragraph 7 on the contract he has with you? He won't be able to buy your house until his loan is fully approved, and therefore you can't buy your next house without that happening. The next two subsections checkboxes all revolve around whether or not your buyer is or is not needing to sell his home before he closes on your home. Subsection B, is your buyer or is he not subject to a real estate sale contingency? A real estate sale contingency means a buyer needs to sell his current house before buying your home, but he hasn't even gotten it under contract yet. He promises to have it under contract by a set date. If he doesn't accomplish this deadline, then the contract is canceled and he receives back his earnest money, while you've lost valuable market time. And your contract is canceled with your seller and you receive your earnest money back and your seller has lost valuable market time. Subsection C, is your buyer or is he not subject to a real estate closing contingency? A real estate closing contingency means a buyer still needs to sell his current house before buying the next one, but unlike the sale contingency, he has already accomplished the first objective in getting it under contract. There's an agreement in place for a buyer to purchase your buyer's home. Do understand that if you check is subject to a real estate sale contingency in prior subsection B, then you are also required to check is subject to a real estate closing contingency in subsection C. In either scenario, both are close contingent buyers. Does that make sense? In any scenario, it's always best practice to have as many of these three checkboxes marked is not as possible. Every box checked is a domino that must fall before you're able to purchase your next house. And both you as the buyer and your seller want as few dominoes as humanly possible. Offers become a lot less attractive to a seller when more and more dominoes begin to stack up, even when the buyer's sale price and mortgage terms are strong. Next up on line 385, number 3, it's asking you to disclose if you've even listed your home for sale up to this point. If above on line 380, number 2, you checked has not entered into a contract to sell buyer's real estate, then there's a chance you haven't even listed your home yet, which, if you plan on offering a contingent offer, please do everything in your power to not check has not. I highly advise against this if you're serious about purchasing your next home. You want to be actively marketing and selling your home if its proceeds are going to fund your next home. Last up on line 387, number 4, if for whatever reason you did mark has not to the previous checkbox, do check box A, promising the seller that you'll be listing your home within 5 business days, and of course, using my services. The alternative is checking box B, disclosing to your seller that you have zero intention of listing on the MLS with a licensed realtor. You intend to sell your home as a for sale by owner, meaning you don't intend to use my services as your real estate agent, nor any other real estate agent services for that matter. I would never recommend this as a means to sell your home, let alone getting a closing contingent offer accepted by a seller. If you check this box, a seller will not accept your offer to purchase his or her home. They'll wait for a better offer. Trust me, they will not. In addition to this, I won't submit it on your behalf. As standard business practice, I do not submit contingent offers which rely on sellers selling their own homes. When a buyer who needs to sell his current house chooses to list his home without agent consultation, our standards just don't align, and that buyer will need to find a different real estate agent to help find his next home. No blood, no foul. Me and these sorts of buyers just aren't good fits. 80% of newly licensed agents are out of the business by the 24-month mark. Perhaps one of these sort of agents can help those sort of buyers when they need to sell their house by owner. Personally, for my preference, I like paddling with the stream, not against it. But don't misconstrue. I'm not saying I won't represent you as a buyer if you're using another real estate agent to sell your home. Perhaps your home you're selling just doesn't make sense for me to represent you because it's too far out of my geographic territory. Maybe you're coming from out of state, whatever might be the case. But I only represent home buyers who display a high level of seriousness in getting their offers accepted and who value the role that real estate agents play on all sides of all negotiations. All right, we've completed the first section of sale of buyer's real estate and are now moving on to the second section, contingencies upon sale and or closing of real estate. Whereas the last section talks specifically about your current status as a home seller, this next section refocuses on your role as the home buyer, just like everywhere else on these 13 pages. Because all of these principles were just discussed with you in the seller role, this won't take too long. You're either going to be a home close contingent buyer or you're going to be both a home sale contingent buyer and also a home close contingent buyer. In either scenario, you need to close on the sale of your current home, right? The only difference is if you've gotten the first domino to fall already by going under contract. In lines 395 through 402, it's all about the home sale contingency. The date we're entering here is when you're promising the seller you'll have a fully executed contract on the home you're selling. It'll need to be a date prior to your closing date that you already promised the seller in paragraph 5, line 49, the closing date. In fact, it should be a significantly earlier date than your close date with your seller because, as you know, it takes 30 to 45 days to close a real estate transaction. With this in mind, the date you already placed in paragraph 5 would have been likely even farther out than 45 days. You need to provide yourself a longer window of time to close this contract than if you were a buyer with nothing to sell. This is why contingent sale offers should be avoided when it's possible. In lines 403 through 4010, it's all about the home close contingency. Like we were discussing as your role as the seller, this would be when you're already under contract for your home to sell, and all the terms of that agreement were listed in all those is and is not checkboxes. And as you know by now, the more favorable option in the eyes of a seller. The date we'll write on line 406 is the close date of the home you're selling. It's going to be the date written in paragraph 5, line 49, the closing date, or a date prior to that, but after the date you promised to have contract by if you promised one directly above on the home sale contingency date in line 396. Does this make sense? Just a lot of dominoes, right? This explains why all across title offices every day a homeowner's house closes in the morning so that the proceeds will fund the closing on the home they're buying in the afternoon. Again, countless dominoes from a lot of potential parties. As a home seller, you desire as few of these possible because your seller desires as few of these as possible as well. In theory, this chain of events can stretch on infinitely in either direction. In reality, we'll work together in reviewing every offer coming in and every offer going out to ensure you're set up for success on both sides of your transactions. Lines 411 through 416, Section 3. If your buyer is unable to meet the contingency dates set forth above, then you need to promptly notify the seller, at which time the terms of your agreement with him have been drastically altered, placing your deal very much in jeopardy. That's what's discussed in the last lines of this section. Beginning on line 417 and continuing through 437, all contingent contracts give the seller the option to continue showing their home to new prospective homebuyers, with the theory that another homebuyer may come along and offer the seller better terms than yours, presumably one without any, or at least less, sale and close contingencies. With a contingent contract, as you've learned by now, you're never home free until all the conditions are met. If a buyer does come along with a stronger offer than yours, then the seller may activate the kickout clause, notifying you that you have a number of hours, typically 24 to 36, to fully waive your contingency rights and continue moving forward with the deal. As grave as this sounds, depending on where you are in the process, this may not be the kiss of death. Perhaps you have a home close contingent contract with your buyer and all has been running smoothly. You're very confident it will close on time without incident. Perhaps you went under contract with your buyer under a home sale contingent offer, but since then they too went under contract for their home, and they're now a home close contingent buyer, again with favorable financing terms and good feelings they'll close on time. This concludes the very detailed and very important explanation of home sale and home close contingencies. Even if you're not selling a home, you need to understand their dynamics because it's possible you could be the home buyer coming in and kicking out a contingent buyer. Or your seller might not be able to purchase their next home without closing with you first. A lot of dominoes involved, right? The less dominoes we can have on the multi-board 7.0, the better the offer. So we're going to do whatever we can to avoid them when possible, but navigate through them when they're not possible to be avoided. The remaining few paragraphs of the contract are much more straightforward, and we're almost done. Paragraph 31, cancellation of prior real estate contract. If, for whatever reason, you're already under contract at a home when entering into a new contract with a new seller, which is a situation I strongly advise we do not put yourself in, then you're obligated to cancel the previous contract and notify your current seller that you have in fact canceled it. If you're already out of attorney review, then you will not get your earnest money back from the contract you're canceling. None of the other contingencies are prohibiting the deal from reaching the closing table. This was your decision and yours alone. Your earnest money is at stake. Never make an offer on a home you don't want to be living in 30 days. Paragraph 32, the home warranty. Commonly used after the home inspection, a buyer may ask the seller to purchase a home warranty on their behalf, which acts as insurance for the home's appliances and mechanicals and sometimes even roof repair. The warranty enables the new homeowner to get certain appliances and mechanical service for a deductible instead of replacing them outright. This is a negotiated paragraph and a seller may not agree to comply. Earlier, I mentioned we shouldn't ask for this up front. We would prefer to use it if only necessary if post-inspection negotiations may require it. Home warranties generally do not cost more than $600 on an annual basis. Paragraph 33. Well or sanitary system inspections. When you're moving from Cook County into Lake County, you may be moving away from Lake Michigan water and a municipal sewage system into an area that utilizes well water and a septic tank. Not tied to the municipality, homeowners take on the responsibility of keeping their well and sanitary systems up to code. You may request the seller provide you with updated inspection reports as it pertains to these systems. This is a negotiated paragraph and a seller may not agree to comply, but it is in their best interest to play nice. Wood destroying infestation. When purchasing a home with an FHA loan, an FHA approved appraiser will be conducting the appraisal, and they're required to inspect for termite infestation. My best rule of thumb for FHA finance buyers, for conventional finance buyers, or full cash buyers. It's simply to avoid making an offer where there's any evidence of insect infestation of any kind. There's other houses out there that just don't have it. Paragraph 35, possession after closing. There are some cases where a seller needs to remain on the property for a period of time after the closing date. This happens when one or both sides' contracts with their other parties don't perfectly align. Think of the closing contingencies. Or maybe a seller is building a new home and it's not yet completed. If you agree to this, then the two sides will set the possession date. The seller will place a security deposit worth at least 2% of the purchase price into an escrow account. The two sides agree to a rent rate. For a temporary time frame, you're now a landlord and the seller is your tenant. This is known as a leaseback. Paragraph 36, as is condition. The seller is fully in their right to sell a home as is, which means they're telling you up front they will not entertain inspection negotiations. They won't address any of your concerns and they won't offer credits back. These will typically be homes which are in need of major TLC, but they're priced accordingly. Usually they are. The seller wants to be done with it, and more often than not, it's a builder who purchases the property because he has the resources to completely renovate it or tear it down and build anew. At the very least, it's somebody who's very handy and has some money set aside. Other times, an as-is property isn't a massive money pit for a home buyer when it's an estate sale, meaning someone has recently inherited a property, usually following the passing of a parent. The house is structurally safe, it's just cosmetically outdated. It's truly grandma's house. If you already have a renovation budget set aside, then an as-is sale gives you a good opportunity to create the home of your dreams if the price and location are ready to go. Remember, a home can always change with the times, its location does not. Paragraph 37, specified party approval. This is for real estate investors with partners who will not eventually be on title, but do have a stake in the business. You will likely not need to concern yourself with this. Paragraph 38, attachments. Any other uncommon documents tied to the offer are mentioned here. Again, you probably won't need to be concerned with this. Paragraph 39, miscellaneous provisions. For certain types of real estate transactions, supplemental agreements are also required, better known as riders. If any of these apply to the transaction, we'll address them at that time. Otherwise, do not concern yourself with this. And voila, there you go. You've just learned the Multi-Board 7.0 contract in its full entirety. I know it was long, so thank you for hanging here with me. The final page is where you make all the prior 12 pages official. You'll be signing and dating it with me having already filled out all the necessary information. Again, thanks for taking the time to review the video today. A lot of info, but you've taken a big step towards being prepared for what will happen in your not so distant future. When we're out there looking at houses, things will speed up at that time. I guarantee you they will. And you'll need to make your decision rather quickly if there's a hot property. This little exercise will allow you to do just that. Any questions, simply reach out to me at 773-620-1111, or I can be emailed at eric, E-R-I-C, at bohnhomes.com. BOHN homes.com. Also, make sure to view all my tutorials here on my YouTube channel, which covers some of these points individually and other relevant real estate topics. Thank you and have a great day.